Okay, I am so excited to teach you about this. We're going to be learning how to learn any language. I am not going to teach you Spanish, nor Korean, nor Japanese, but I'm going to teach you how to learn that all by yourself with these tools. Not all languages are the same, and not all languages are to be treated the same way. When we learn a language, we're basically breaking down the rules of the weird sounds that we make out and what they mean. The first thing we're going to get done is to get the grasp of what type of language we're learning, and then we're going to decide accordingly what kind of learning system we're going to use. So let's just get into it, shall we? Okay. So if you think of babies, right, they don't sit in class, they just simply exist. And then at some point they start talking. How do they do that? Well, it's this thing called absorbing, right? And while we're not as smart as babies anymore, we still have that ability to an extent. And when we sit and listen, we grasp information. So babies would simply just sit and listen, right? They would listen to their parents talk, their friends, the everyone who's at any place that they're at. And they would just simply, at some point, understand what's happening. But there is some sort of active learning, such as your mama would hold on a picture of a bird, and they would say, this is a bird, and then you would repeat. And then this is more like later stages, if you would understand. Without it, it would be just like a lot longer. And we, as adults, we don't have the same level of intelligence, because babies are just like super intelligent and they absorb everything, but they're also super innocent. That's for a different topic. But we can still use some of the tools that we used as children, such as absorbing, which means whatever language you're going to learn, once you are starting to learn it, you're going to basically put it everywhere. You're going to put it in your background, in your podcasts, Spotify, songs, whatever you're going to use. You're going to put everything in the language that you're learning. Now, at the beginning, it will be very confusing if you were to change your settings or stuff like that, but you're going to have to do that on a later stage when you're more confident with the language. Now, my personal approach to learning any language is to treat it as if I've never learned any language in my life, including my own language. It's to approach it with beginner's mind, not have anything attached to it. So when I was learning English, I pretended I was a baby or a child learning English, and I picked up words from around me. I watched a lot of things without subtitles. Now, this is one of the greatest things that you're going to have to adapt, is that of course we're going to need structured learning, such as grammar and vocabulary learning. You're going to do that actively. You're not going to listen and then hope it sticks. No, you're going to have to study again. We're not as smart as babies. But once you have some sort of understanding, like basic grammar and basic conversational ability in you, you're going to start to watch things without subtitles, which is a lot more fun than you think it is. You just sit down and you watch your favorite movie that you already know in your home language, in your real language, and you're going to watch it with the audio, like dubbing of the language that you're learning. And this is a good beginning, but you're also going to just watch everything you're doing. You're going to do it in the language that you're learning. This would be also journaling. You would be writing anything from I love to eat bananas to last night I had a wonderful epiphany about the true meaning of life, right? So you're going to basically write down anything and everything that you know in the new language that you're learning and try to form sentences, because that's how our brain makes connections. That's basically it for that. And now, this is the most basic tool that we're going to learn, but I believe that when learning languages that have letters that are not English letters, I recommend learning the new letters of the language. For example, when I was learning Korean, first of all, I mastered how the letters sound, exactly the way they sound. So a lot of people miss out on that and they learn with like romanized letters, and then they end up not actually knowing what the language sounds like, and they sound like they're speaking English in that language. For example, the word in Korean for hello is 안녕하세요. 안녕하세요. But if you're speaking English and you read it with the English letters, you would say something like 안녕하세요, which sounds like you're speaking English. Do you get it? I hope you get it. Like how I've heard a lot of Koreans say words in English that I did not recognize until I saw them write it down or they explained to me with context. Stuff like, okay, so there's this word called self-service. If you've ever been to a restaurant and there's self-service, they just called it self, which it's on it by itself, it doesn't make any sense. But that's like how bad it is, right? Like in Japanese, there's like the McDonald's, and it doesn't sound like McDonald's. It just sounds like they're speaking Japanese. In the same way, all these different languages are going to have to be treated as their languages and not as, oh, how can I remind myself of my own language while learning this new language? Okay, so I have a bunch of examples here. Just like how you would speak in French. A lot of people who speak French and then they learn English, they because it's so similar, they think they can just say the things that they used to, like the same mouth movements. Now, this is the most important part, right? Because mouth movements are what makes the language. When you speak French, your words sound like you speak this way, and it's basically just a language that you're used to, the same mouth movements with the new language. But the way, like, for example, they would say hello instead of hello. These are just examples, but basically that's what you need to know. You need to know how to pronounce the new letters that you're learning and how they sound, which is why I love active listening. If you listen to the radio, you listen to a scene. I really like watching movies and dramas because you can see how people speak, but also it can be dangerous because these are scripts being read out loud. So you might like listening to podcasts about people actually speaking to each other, and you might like just listening on YouTube to YouTubers who just speak in the language that you're learning. So that's it for that part. What we're going to basically master is consistency. And it's really important when learning anything. I really recommend having at least 10 minutes throughout your day to learn the new language. I'm saying at least because the recommended time is, I would prefer 3 hours a day, at least at the first 3 months. But if you are very busy, at least 10 minutes per day, because you're going to have to engage in the new language in every way in which you can. Grammar. So many people say that vocabulary is more important than grammar, but I think they are equally important. When learning a new language, you're going to have to understand how it works. It doesn't matter if you know how to say bank or post office if you don't know how to ask how to get there. So you would learn first sentence structure, and then you would learn all the words necessary in that order. If you learned words like morning, good, night, day. You can listen to how people would say these words in that order. For example, in English you say good day, good morning and good night, right? And you could just try to figure out, if you learned a bunch of words and you tried to put them together into a sentence, it doesn't matter if it doesn't make sense at the beginning, but when you were learning grammar and we understand how to make these into sentences, then words would start to make sense. For example, if I want to say, have a good day, in Korean, I would first look back at what I learned and I understand what to have means and I understand what good means and a day, and then I would just mash them together and try to say the sentence out loud. And this is why I really like grammar points, because then you can actually just learn the structure and put it into a sentence. Some languages have certain order for the sentences. I'm just going to give you a bunch of examples. In Japanese, it is subject, object, and then verb. For example, I, the book, read. Which, like, 私は本を読みます. Okay, which is basically just like I, the book, read. Okay, and it's with a lot of languages. So when you learn a new language, you're going to first look at the order of the subject, object, and verb. For example, in Arabic, it is VSO, but SVO is also used. So for example, you would say verb like do, and then you say the subject I, and this is the object book. Okay, like read I, the book. Once we have the basic learning, we can move on to absolutely doing anything and everything you can to master the new language by listening, writing, speaking, and basically just anything you would do in your own language, you would do it in the new language. For example, reading books. Okay, it can start with children's books. Just read it, and it's going to be much harder than you think. Many people will jump off to actual books really fast, and that's not smart. I tried that. It's very confusing. You are going to start with children's books, and then you're going to change your settings on your phone to the new language, and you're going to download apps that are going to be helpful to speak that language. For example, there's Hello Talk, which can be a little bit weird sometimes, but it's still a very good place to try speaking a new language. You're going to perhaps take a trip or find your local person who speaks that language, which is not very likely to happen sometimes, but if you are in a very central place, you might find, for example, a Korean community if you're learning Korean, or a Spanish community if you're learning Spanish, or whatever that is. If you can afford it, I really recommend traveling to the new place, to the place that you're going to want to speak the language. If you don't have that, there's Discord communities, there's online school with a K. They have a lot of communities that learn new languages and speak with each other. You're going to practice things. I used to do this a lot, where I would just watch a K-drama that I really liked, and I would really just drop the subtitles and just watch the whole thing. I had another really good idea from another person who learned Korean, is that they would just have dialogue with the scene. Like they would take a scene from a K-drama and they would pretend that the person was asking them that question and they would try to answer it. You can try recording yourself and talking about how your day went, and then listen to yourself and hear if it sounds natural, and you compare it with real speakers, native speakers of the language, and you would compare it and try it again until it sounds really, really natural. Okay? This is basically it. There are a lot of online resources. Now, A lot of people asked me about Duolingo and if it's helpful. No hate on Duolingo. I used it for 7 years, but it's not enough. You cannot learn a language fluently only by doing Duolingo, especially not if you're going on to 1 to 2 lessons per day. If you want to learn a new language, you're going to have to use it as another tool along with other resources. There are a lot of free courses online. There really is everything out there if you want to learn a language. YouTube, webs, I learned with Talk to Me in Korean, which is great for learning Korean if you want to learn that language. There's programs that you can join that you can actually go, but there's a lot of free resources for people who cannot afford to actually go to the new country. So I hope that you have some kind of clue. This is very basic information, but some people don't know it, so I'm giving it out because it might help someone.